Well, first off, thank you all so much for helping my project. Could you all say a little bit about yourself? Maybe Allison, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name is Allison Penzak. I grew up Allison Worden. My dad was an Apollo astronaut. He was the command module pilot on Apollo 15. Bill and I live in Sugar Land, Texas, and we have 2 boys. And I've been a stay-at-home mom for 22 years.
That's awesome. Bill, could you say a little bit about yourself as well?
Sure. So, Bill Penzak, I am married to Allison and the father of the 2 boys of which we speak. So I own a consulting company that is marketing consulting for medium-sized businesses. Spent the first 20 years or so of my career in marketing consulting, working for other companies. And when I was a kid, I grew up on Long Island, and I went back and looked at it, and it was about 5 miles from where they built the LEM. And so as a kid growing up in the 60s and 70s, everyone wanted to be an astronaut. And I'm colorblind, so I can't fly at night, and I'm claustrophobic, so I certainly couldn't sit in a capsule, and I've got no sense of direction. But having married into a family with such a pedigree and such a background of being an astronaut that went to the moon was kind of the next best thing to being an astronaut myself.
Wow. As y'all were talking, I thought of 2 completely different lines of questions I had for each of y'all. Maybe Allison, just coming back to you for a bit. What was it like growing up with a father who was traveling in space?
The biggest thing that sticks out to me is that when you have a father who was training in the Apollo program, you don't see him very much. It was very time-consuming, demanding job. So whenever he was around, it was always a big thrill that we got to spend time with him. Everybody asked me if I was scared when he flew to the moon. Did that upset all of us? Were we worried, sick? And I tell people, I was so relieved for him that he got to go after all that training and just completely dedicating yourself to something like that. I was proud of him. I was excited for him. And I guess, the emotions tend to roll down from the adults to the children, I never sensed any fear from him. It was all just very, very excited and relieved and just thrilled basically to be able to go. So yeah, those are kind of my most prominent memories of growing up around that.
Just to help put it in perspective, when he was on Apollo 9, how old were you?
Well, he was back up on Apollo 12, and then he was first crew on Apollo 15, and I was 11 years old.
Apollo 15. Okay, 11. Okay, so we're just in middle school at that point, probably.
Exactly. I was very young. I think young enough to miss some of the more sobering elements of that journey.
Well, in fact, there was a picture that ran in Time magazine of Allison and her sister at the launch, and I think one of them is asleep and one of them is yawning. So getting up early, dressing up and getting over to the launch site, and then when it's the whole waiting happened, and then falling asleep. So I think the perspective that you have today is maybe different than when you're 11.
Oh, totally, yeah, for sure.
Also, I think around Apollo 15, there was still this thought, we had successfully gone to the moon several times. What I understand is NASA had contracted for something like 500 different Saturn V's and landers and what have you. So the sense that I get of that time, and I'd like to see what your thoughts was that this would just be one of many different flights to the moon, and that we really, it really wasn't that exciting because it was becoming routine.
Well, I think it was still in the days of excitement, as far as I can remember, because of course Apollo 13 was only 2 missions before that. And I used to tease my dad, like, so 13 came before 15. So you saw what could go horribly wrong and you still signed up for this thing. But I think that the guys who were training with my dad, like that whole group of guys who came to NASA to be Apollo astronauts, I think they hoped that this program was going to go on and they could all have a chance to go. I don't think anybody saw it wrapping up so quickly.
Because you think about it, when Kennedy made his Rice University speech and said we're going to put send a man to the moon and bring him safely back before the end of the decade, like, I think a lot of people unfortunately felt like we checked the box. So Apollo 11, we sent people to the moon, we brought them back safely. Okay, then we did 12, 13 didn't really work out the way that it should. We got 14 and 15 and 16. It's like, enough already. And so even lately, I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I don't even know why we're going to send a man to the moon already. Or again, because we've already been there. And then he started going off into all the conspiracy theories about how they didn't really go the first time. And I told him I was going to sick Buzz Aldrin on him to punch him in the nose like he did with that reporter. So again, it goes back to, you set this big expectation and you achieve it, and then you do it again and it's not as special. And to take nothing away from the Skylab astronauts or the shuttle astronauts or anybody who's training right now, it's a big commitment. It's a big toll on your family, and it's still dangerous as hell.
And, that's an interesting point you mentioned there. One of the questions that's come up in these interviews is, why do we stop going? And when you think through sort of like the political process and the reasoning and the population at the time, the amazing thing in retrospect is not that we stopped after Apollo 17, but that there was an Apollo 12.
Mm-hmm.
At all. Yeah,
at all, yeah.
And what a lot of people don't understand is what the missions were different. The scientific missions were different, and as they advanced, so again, not to take anything away from 11, but they proved the point that we could land, and that the LEM would land on the moon, and then they could get back to the mothership and all that. But then as the missions went on, they got more and more scientific. So I know, talking to Al before he passed away, he would say that the 15 was probably the most scientifically based mission that there was. And, that, I think that sometimes maybe unfortunately fall on deaf ears for people. Like, okay, we've been there, but all the other things that they're doing, have bearing on and have informed a lot of science and technology that we get to benefit from today. And that wasn't just on 11, it was through the whole process.
Yeah, I think it's very important how it gets positioned in the population's mind about why we're going. In the Kennedy speech is very much about getting a person safely to the moon and back. And like you said, once we did that with Apollo 11, we checked that box, and everything after that just looked to be kind of like rubbing it in the Russians' face. We could do it again and again and again. It's like at some point you go, maybe enough already. And that's one of the things that concerns me with sometimes how the Artemis project is being positioned as being landing the first woman and the next man, is because if that's all that sticks in people's minds after that first landing, why go back? You've achieved your goal.
Yeah. Because there's so much that we don't know, and you think about the difference in science from 1969 to now. Even think about, and again, draw from a story that Al used to say, said the computing power that I have in my phone is greater than everything that we had on that whole mission that took us to the moon and back.
Including the entire mission control.
Yeah. And it's frightening, the type of technology that they relied on and put people's lives in peril, and it worked, obviously, but then we didn't know what we didn't know, and now I think we've got a better insight into it. And that whole process of having, pun intended, like a moonshot project, is transformative for society, and it's transformative definitely for science and for technology as well. And, you know, when we quit doing that as humans, then we got more problems than we do now.
Well, and I'm kind of curious, Allison, what was Al's reaction with the cancellation of the program? I mean, how did y'all feel about it, and where did it go?
Okay, that's an interesting question for me because, you know, the crew of Apollo 15 was unceremoniously discharged after their mission because they presumably took things for profit and they weren't supposed to do that. And, you know, in retrospect, everybody says it was every crew was doing that, but, you know, they were the ones that got.
And just to clarify, they didn't steal anything. They brought things along that they flew to the moon for later, to be able to sell it later on. And
Right.
As I said, I mean, if you look at the auction that happened a couple of years ago, you know, Neil Armstrong's kids sold a bunch of stuff that went to the moon, and it was the same sort of thing. But for whatever reason, and Al writes about it in his book, for whatever reason, you know, they picked on Apollo 15 crew.
Mm-hmm.
So he was, I think what you're going to say is that he was kind of out of.
I was going to say that he moved to California. He worked at Ames Research Center. I don't remember him ever really making a comment to me about the end of the Apollo program. One day recently, I was like maybe 2 years ago when I went to NASA with Dad that day, and I got to meet the 12 new astronauts that they had chosen. And they're all like incredibly accomplished and just like it's ridiculous the degrees and the experiences that they have had, you know, Navy SEALs and he's also a lawyer and a doctor, you know, whatever. So but when we left there and Dad had a little Q&A with them, and it was great because they really talked about things like, yeah, why do we need to have a harness during this particular, and my dad would be like, yeah, you don't need one. You know, so it was weird for me because it's like, oh my goodness, there's just humans talking about these things that we think are way beyond us.
Did he, as he got older, did he get more reflective about that? I mean, I knew him. I mean, I knew him for 24 years from the time that you and I were together. But
yeah.
Did he get more circumspect about it or more cavalier about the program over time? Like, yeah, you don't need that.
I feel like he just got more communicative the older he got. So I had more opportunities to ask questions. And what I was going to say about that day at NASA is that we were joking because it actually happened to be take your daughter to work day, which is hilarious, right? Because I'm 60 years old, you know, and I just happened to be hanging out with him that day. But we thought that was very funny. We got a lot of mileage out of that. Oh, let's take your daughter to work day. But when we left there, he said, you know, I'm kind of worried for them because I don't know if they're going to go anywhere. Like he felt bad for them because, like I said, they're incredibly accomplished and dedicating themselves to this thing. And he was like, I just hope they're going to get to go. So, but to answer Bill's question, I think with age comes some, you know, perspective well, Bill and I both know Dad was pretty candid about things too. He didn't sugarcoat things. And that's one thing I think everybody liked about him is, you know, if you knew if he liked someone or didn't like them. And he was not much of a politician, I guess, but I did feel like I got to ask more questions about what he had experienced and, you know, things that maybe I was too young or it was just too awkward to ask in the previous years. So
this is sort of related to this. It's a little bit of a tangent, but you know, Al was kind enough to speak to a lot of different groups, some professional groups that I'd worked with, or even like our kids' Cub Scout pack. And even in the dozen times or so that I saw him speak, you know, more often than not, people would ask the same question or a few questions like, you know, did you really go to space? How do you go to the bathroom in space? Blah, 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 blah. And every time he answered them, it was like he's heard it for the first time. So we had that genuineness to it, and didn't, roll his eyes or anything else. And so I think that just speaks to the character of that breed of people that are going to hear that same darn question over and over and over again and have to pretend like they never heard it before. And I think he liked that kind of celebrity piece of it. He wasn't super high profile or snooty about it, but he liked being in the limelight, and that was fun to watch him do that, and and to watch him speak and answer the questions and be super engaging.
Yeah, it turned out after being an engineer and a scientist his whole life, and a military pilot, that he actually had a lot of talent and ability at being a speaker. And so he ended up just traveling the whole world and being in every organization and group that you can think of, and having paid speaking engagements. He was very charming, very articulate, and I think he truly enjoyed going out and speaking to groups and answering questions and stuff. It was really fun to watch him blossom as a speaker.
And then kind of continuing on that education theme, he started the Astronaut Foundation, or the
Endeavor Scholarship.
Endeavor Scholarship Foundation that funds basically STEM trips where kids from literally around the world get to go to a space camp, and they fund all of that through there. So he liked hanging out with the kids, and like Allison said, he liked to travel around the world doing it. So he did really, and he never made a big deal about it, but he really did like to give back, both monetarily through the scholarship fund, but also just give up his time to causes that he thought were important.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny how you were talking about his interaction with the current astronauts, and about needing the harness, and that's not really needed.
Right.
There's 3 teams right now competing for the human landing system to land on the moon, and one of them is the national team. And they recently, and Harrison Schmitt and a couple of other of the Apollo astronauts are kind of participating in part of that team. And it was really neat to get they released a video, I think last week, where as part of that video, they have these Apollo astronauts kind of talking about, the past and the future. And it was, these are people that actually went there, it's not theoretical to them.
Exactly.
So.
Wow.
Bill, I did have one question for you that's right in your area of expertise. A lot of people that I talk to, and I would say as high as like 80 to 90% of the non-space people don't know that NASA is planning to go to the moon in 2024. Now, as a marketing expert, what should NASA be doing differently?
Well, I think they need to explain not just that they're doing it, but why they're doing it, because that's going to cut a wider swath. So, those two messages are not mutually exclusive. So in talking about the why, they can maybe convert some of the people like I described earlier, like, why the hell are we doing this? But also, to sell a big idea. And it goes back to the Kennedy speech about what's the big line in the sand? What's the big, hairy, audacious goal that we're trying to set? And they need to paint that picture. And frankly, I don't have a good grasp of that either. So if anybody from NASA is listening, I'd be glad to work with you for. But selling the big idea, not just the fact that we're just doing it, but what it's going to mean. The ultimately good marketing comes back to answering the question of WIFM. What's in it for me? And so I think if we're going to be spending billions of dollars to do that, what's the benefit to the country, to the economy, the world, and all of that? And I think that needs to be teased out now, and it's probably not too soon to start doing that, because I don't know, now that we have a new administration with a lot of expensive priorities, one of the other reasons that Apollo got shut down was for budget reasons. There was an expensive war going on at the same time. People were wondering why we're spending money to send other people to the moon when we've done it already. And the country right now has got a lot of financial burdens and a lot of debt. So they need to do some selling to it, and literally lobbying for it, to make sure that people understand why we're doing it and what meaning and what benefits it's going to produce.
Well, maybe we should start with two individuals right now. What could be in it for you that would make it worth it in your mind?
You want to go first?
Well, we already have Tang and Velcro, so one thing I think about is, that the Channel 2 interview that Dad and I did July of 2019.
Yeah.
I think that was the interview where Dad said, we're going to need somewhere else to go. Like, this planet is not going to last forever. And I was like, what? It's not? I mean, I was kind of planning on that. But so I don't know what kind of time frame he was talking about, but he seemed to feel that we are exploring space with the intention of finding somewhere for people to habitate.
So I'm going to take a different,
Sure.
because, and maybe it does go back to sort of the political state now, and I'm not going to get political, but we do, as a country, need something to unify us and to get everybody around and behind, and doing creating a spectacular event and rallying people behind it is a good thing from a reality standpoint, from a communication standpoint, and everything in between. But the spin on it is, it's like, okay, we've done it already. What's different about it this time? I think that's the part of the messaging that we do need to tease out, because you're right. We do have Tang, and we do have Velcro, we do have microchips and all the other things that came out of Apollo. But I think it's as much spiritual, if that's the right word, as it is practical.
Yeah, it's funny. As you were saying that, I was thinking there's basically two types of answers you give to why are we going now. You have the cheap answer and the deep answer. The cheap answer is to send the first woman, which is great, but why do it twice? And then the deep answer is that how do you see humanity 500 years from now? And if you do see it as a spacefaring like civilization, then the moon is your logical first step. But if you don't, then I'm kind of challenged to find good reasons to do it as well.
Yeah, it's like the story you probably heard before of the traveler that comes in a medieval village, and he comes up to three people working around a building, and he asks the first one, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm laying bricks." And the second guy says, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm building a wall." And the third one, he asks, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm building a cathedral to honor God." So some of it is a matter of how you look at it and what your perspective is upon it. And I think that's part of the messaging too.
Yeah, bricks aren't going to make it happen, but the cathedral could.
Yeah. So the messaging has to be more on the cathedral scope than on the brick or the wall piece of it.
So if it was safe and affordable, would either one of you have an interest in experiencing space for yourselves?
I would not.
I think I'm with you. So the older I've gotten, like, I don't like roller coasters anymore.
No.
When I was younger, like in my 20s and 30s, I had this to-do list that I put together, and I wanted to skydive. Got no desire to do that now. I wanted to hang glide. Don't want to do that now. I mean, I've flown a plane before, but I wasn't very good at it, and quit doing it, thank God. But there's yeah, no, I don't. I'm going to leave that to other people.
There's only one ride at Disney World that I will not ever do again, and that is Mission to Mars.
Oh, wow.
I cannot do that at all. I can't stand it. It's your body's doing one thing, and then what you're seeing visually is something different. Oh no, that makes me ill. I would be terrible. I'm too old and fussy, right? I mean, I need my iced tea, and no.
And is it
claustrophobic?
And claustrophobic.
Is it basically being on a big rocket and being accelerated in the small capsule that's the problem, or does height and like other factors come into it?
Well, I am tall also, but I feel like my dad and those guys were willing to submit like 100%. We're way past that, man. We're in our 60s. We're living the dream. We're having fun. We don't want to. They were willing to do whatever it took, and I'm past that. I'm not that demographic anymore.
Um, the reason I ask is because there's this. Well, I guess first of all, the vomit comet. The plane that
Oh
does
yeah.
the where you get a few seconds of weightlessness. I actually went on one of those flights a couple of years ago with both of my children. I wanted to bring my wife too, but she said somebody has to survive, so I'm not sure what that means. But but is that something that either one of y'all would be interested in doing, like just feeling the weightlessness from the hyperbolic flight?
I would do that. So not the capsule at NASA, the spinner thing, but if I was on a flight and they do that, I'd to get the floating. I think I would do that.
At least you did that I fly thing.
Yeah.
Where they put you in the wind tunnel.
The concept is similar, yeah.
But if I remember, I don't think you loved it. And keep in mind, so it's going to be somewhat like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. That's okay.
Well, actually, I got to tell you, I was really concerned about having indigestion and throwing up during the flight and what have you. And I was really amazed that you have no idea what the plane is doing. All you feel is that one moment you feel normal and next moment you're just floating. And it actually was not bad at all. I mean, I did like spins and
see, I've got a much easier alternative than that. It's called vodka. You can get the same effect, and I can do it from the comfort of my own home.
And you have no idea what the plane is doing after that.
Yeah, the plane is. And then there's this other group, Space Perspectives in Florida, that's planning to have like a capsule with like 9 people, 8 passengers and a pilot, that is below a large hydrogen-filled balloon that goes way up in the stratosphere over multiple hours, and you get to see the blackness of space and the curvature of the Earth. But it's a nice, gentle ride. It's like, and the capsule is a little bit wider. They're talking about having a little bar and food and stuff on board.
Okay. I'd be much more interested in that. I mean, I've been in a hot air balloon and stuff like that. I've been in plenty of planes or helicopters. I mean, I'm all about that. I could totally do that.
Okay. But that would not. I would find that attractive. But there's so many places on Earth that we haven't seen yet on our bucket list, and we've been to a lot of them, that I'd rather spend the money and the time to do that.
Yeah.
Or to go back to some of the places where we've been.
Well, I kind of messed up on the scheduling because I have a work meeting in a couple of minutes that I have to go to. But I would love to talk to you all some more. So I was wondering if maybe we could schedule a follow-up call sometime.
Yeah.
And the other thing I should mention is I also have put together a North Houston Space Society chapter up here in the north part of town. And we have like monthly meetings. Used to meet in the library. Right now we meet on Zoom, of course. It'd be great to have you all come sometime and maybe share some of your experiences.
Sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'd be happy.
Allison's planning to go to Space Fest this summer, we think. Yeah, so we want to preserve the legacy, and obviously this is a topic of high interest to us. So shoot us, let us know some times to get together. Maybe not next week, but the week after.
Okay.
Love to continue the conversation, and hopefully you got enough today for at least one podcast. We were.
It's wonderful. It was such a pleasure to meet y'all and to talk to y'all.
So nice to meet you, Nathan.
Thank you so much. Thanks for letting us do it, Nathan.
Hope we see you again.
You will. Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, honey.
Bye, honey.